really gave me a good reason to read. It was like read The Crucible or play Black Ops. Welcome back to my channel. Today, as you can tell by the title, is going to be a very different video than anything I've ever filmed on my channel before. So usually I stick to like reviews, beauty, fashion, stuff like that. Today we're going to be talking about books. Yes, that is right, you heard me correctly, books. So I recently developed this obsession with reading and like watching reading vlogs and like watching reviews of books. I don't know who I've become. Like, send help. Anyone who knows me knows that I am not a reader. I have never been a reader. Literally, I don't know how I even graduated high school, because the books that you're supposed to read, like they give you a new book every quarter that you're supposed to read. Did not read those books. From grade 6 to grade 12, I probably read all of 2 books, and that was Catcher in the Rye and what was the other one? Oh, The Great Gatsby. Those are the only 2 books that I read. Between Spark Notes and like, I think it was called Pink Monkey. I think that's what it was called. I may be dating myself by saying that, because anytime I've said that to somebody else, they have no idea what I'm talking about. I'm gonna look it up. It's a study resource for junior high, high school, and college students. Yeah, I'm not crazy. Pink Monkey was a thing. I didn't just make that up. Why does everybody look at me like I'm crazy when I talk about Pink Monkey as if no one's ever heard of it? I'm not crazy.
I'm no loon.
So anyway, between Cliff Notes, Spark Notes, Pink Monkey, like that was basically how I passed English for 6 years. Those kind of resources are what helped me get through school. Like, God bless, thank you to the creators of those things. Otherwise, I would not have a high school diploma. So the fact that I've read, what are we at, 5 in 1 month. And I know you're thinking like, oh, like who cares? Like there are literally people on YouTube that are posting videos like, I read 24 books in a day. Like, can't relate. I think that FOMO probably had a little bit to do with my recent obsession with reading, because I think that just seeing all the books that people were reading and the conversations that they were having, the debates they were having about these books, and like not being able to, first of all, even know what they're talking about, but like partake in the conversation. I'm just like, ooh, like I want to read this book so like I can decide who I agree with. So quite a few of these books were inspired. The books that I read for July and also the books on my TBR for August were very heavily inspired by Book Talk and BookTube. So if you are familiar with those things and the books that may appear in those videos, then you will definitely see some familiar, I was gonna say familiar faces, familiar covers, familiar titles. I don't really know how to do a book video. This is my first time. I'm sorry, guys. We're gonna get into all the books that I read in July, and then we're also gonna talk about books that I have on my TBR for August. So starting with Malibu Rising, this is by Taylor Jenkins Reid, and I do have another Taylor Jenkins Reid book that I'm going to talk about after this one, but this was the first book that I read for July. This is what kind of got me into reading, and this book was, for me, almost 5 stars. I gave it 4 stars, but it was so close to getting 5 stars. For me, what made it lose a star was the ending. I wasn't crazy about the ending. I'll talk about that in a second. This book basically follows 4 siblings, and they have a troubled childhood. One of their parents is a celebrity, and then 2 of the 4 kids become celebrities in their own right, and then the other 2 kind of just tag along, and they're famous by association. So they're just like this famous family. And it follows the siblings, but it also gives you a lot of like then and now. So it goes back into the past, and it talks about like their parents and how their parents met, and then it kind of jumps forward in time. Once you get to the second half of the book, the second half of the book is mostly focused on this big party. It's like the party of the year that everybody, all the celebrities and people in Malibu and stuff, like everybody who's anybody goes to this party. So something that they've been doing for years, but this year it just gets very crazy. I'll leave it at that. It gets very wild, much more out of control than they were expecting, and you know, more crazy than it's been in previous years. And there's a lot of stuff that happens, a lot of people that show up. The reason why I didn't care for the ending was because I felt like they introduced a lot of characters and gave us like background on a lot of characters, especially in the second half of the book. Gave us a lot of background on all these like peripheral, like side characters, and then I feel like in the end there wasn't enough payoff. Like I got to the end of the book and I was like, okay, what was the point of me needing to know that this person just got divorced from their wife, or that this person's husband just died? It was almost like they were trying to like fill the pages with something, and so they just like added in all these extra characters. And like it was cool. Like I enjoyed reading about like their backstory, or their, you know, where they came from, or what their plans are and stuff like that. But I just feel like it didn't go anywhere. It was just like, hey, like, by the way, like that guy over there, like he has 2 kids and a wife, and his wife just left him. And it's like, okay. That was the reason why I deducted a star. I feel like this book could have been so much better if all of these extra characters and information that you got ended up like paying off and it mattering. Is that a word? It needed to matter in the end, and it just didn't. And that's the reason why I had to take a star away from it. Also, I don't think I said this already, but this book takes place, the present day of the book, the party and all that takes place, I think, in 1983. And then the flashbacks, I think, start as far back as 1956. Overall, though, I thought it was a really good book. I thought it was very interesting. Definitely a page turner. I loved like the atmosphere, like the whole like setting in like Malibu, like all the celebrity gossip and stuff. Like it was still a good book. It just was the ending that I wasn't crazy about. So definitely 4 stars. Almost 5 stars. I would give it like a 4.5, like so close to a 5-star book. Next up, we have another Taylor Jenkins Reid book, and it is The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, which I'm sure you guys have heard about this as well. This book, this I gave 5 stars. This was really good. This book is basically an interview between one of the main characters, Monique, and then Evelyn Hugo herself. Evelyn Hugo is this celebrity. She's a movie star. She's been around since like the 50s or the 60s. That's kind of like where the story starts. And she's basically doing like a tell-all. So she's telling Monique everything, you know, all the good, the bad, the ugly, about her rise to fame, her career, the people that she met, you know, throughout her lifetime. She had 7 husbands, obviously, so she goes through each one of her husbands, and you get the story behind, you know, how they met, or why they got married, or why they aren't married anymore. And it's very interesting. There definitely was a character in this book that I was not expecting, that I honestly didn't like. It is the primary love interest for Evelyn Hugo. Did not like that character. Could not stand that character. This book, the timeline goes from like, I think the 1950s up to like basically modern day. I think the present setting is like 2017 or something. For me, what was really interesting was that you didn't know in the beginning and really quite understand why she chose Monique to write the book of, you know, her life, like why she chose Monique to write her memoir. It was very like confusing, like, why did you pick this girl? Monique is essentially this obscure nobody. It's not like she's like this famous writer, and with Evelyn Hugo being as famous as she is, she literally could have had anybody write this book, but she chose this girl, basically plucked her out of obscurity and decided to have her write this book. So for me, that was what I was very interested to see, how this story was going to eventually get to the point of us figuring out why she chose her, which, chef's kiss, it was great. I loved it. And you also get to see a little bit of the writer, like Monique. You get to see a little bit of her life as well, and kind of how her life is changed as a result of her spending this time with Evelyn Hugo and like listening to her story and stuff like that. It's such an interesting story how it all comes together. It was something where like the ending connected to the beginning, and it all kind of came together and makes sense. This is definitely like celebrity gossip at its finest. Like, this is like tabloids in a novel, and it's giving you like the behind the scenes of Hollywood. This book definitely has me looking at like modern day celebrities and being like, And people said that they cried reading this book, and I don't know, maybe I'm just not a crier like that. There is a character that I very much like love, like such a good-hearted person. And what happens to that character is very unfortunate and very sad. But I didn't cry. The only negative thing that I can say about this book is, like I said, that the main love interest in this book, I just couldn't stand them. I could not stand them. I felt like they were jealous and insecure and petty and whiny and just very annoying. But that's just me. Other than that particular character, this book is great. And I think that maybe that character was supposed to come across that way. Like, that may have been the whole point. So if that's the case, then job well done. I can't say like anything more. Like, this book is just really good. Like, if you haven't read it, like, you should go read it. So then the next book that I picked up was The Weekend Away, and this is actually a movie on Netflix starring, I think Leighton Meester is the main character. And that's actually the reason why I got this book. I saw the movie on Netflix, and I'm the kind of person where I have to read the book before I watch the movie or the show. I can't do it the other way around. This book follows two friends who go on vacation together, and one of them basically goes missing. And so you spend the book trying to figure out what happened to her friend that goes missing. And this definitely had some good twists in it. It wasn't anything that I didn't see coming, but they did a good job of like trying to make you suspect everyone. At some point or another, you're basically going to suspect every character in this book. So I really liked that about this. I will say that it was kind of slow in the beginning. It really doesn't start to pick up until maybe like the 6th, 7th, 8th chapter, something like that. Yeah, somewhere around like page 70. Oh, and this is by Sarah Alderson. I don't think I said that. This is by Sarah Alderson. So yeah, this was a quick read. I would give this book probably 4 stars. It wasn't the best thing I've ever read, but it was good. Like, I would recommend if you're into... Please hold. I think that I was very satisfied with the ending. This ending kind of it left it very open. That was another thing that the movie did. The movie had like a very like closed ending where it's like, it's very final, very finite, like this is what it is. Whereas the book, the ending was a little more like open, where it's like, okay, there could be a second book, there could be a sequel. But the movie did not allow for that. So anyway, I would say if you're into books and movies that are like mystery, suspense, thriller, somebody goes missing and we have to figure out who done it or where they went, this was pretty good. So the next book that I read, I did not have a physical copy of it with me, but I will pop it onto the screen. It is Big Little Lies, which is also a series on HBO. I had never heard of this book, had never heard of the show until recently. Someone was telling me about the show and they were like, oh, I think you would really like it because you're into that kind of stuff. So I gave it a try. You know, I watched the first episode, loved it. And then I watched like maybe the first 20 minutes of the second episode, loved it. And I was like, I wonder if this is based on a book. Like, what are the odds? And so I Googled it, and it turns out that it was based on a book. And I was like, pause, everything must stop. Cannot continue forward with this show. Have to read the book first. So that's what I did. If you're not familiar with the book or the show, it basically follows these moms that are all of their kids are in the same grade. I think in the book they're all in kindergarten. I think on the show they're all in 1st grade. So they're all like 5 or 6 years old. And it follows like their parents, their moms and their dads, and the different things that are going on in their lives. And it kind of follows the kids as well, but not as closely. You mostly see what's going on with the kids through the parents' interactions and stuff like that. And it's a murder mystery, so someone has died. First of all, you don't know who died. You know that someone's dead, but you don't know who. And then obviously you also don't know who did it or how it happened or anything like that. So it jumps kind of forward and back in time, between kind of giving you all the events that led up to this person's death, as well as modern day interviews between some of the people that were at the event that this person died at. You know, speaking to the police and telling them, you know, what they remember and stuff like that. I really enjoyed it. It's a book that I would definitely recommend if you're into like murder mysteries. This was definitely more of like a rich housewife type of first world problems, small town gossip type of murder mystery, which I personally enjoyed. I would say if you're into those kind of things, if that sounds interesting to you, then definitely check out both the show and the book. And I didn't say who the author was because I don't have the book in front of me, but I think it was Leanne, what's her last name? Moriarty? I could have just butchered her last name, but it's something like that. I'll put it down here on the screen just so that if you want to look it up, you know who the author is. But yeah, I really enjoyed that book. I would give it I'd give it 4 stars. I'd give it 4.5 stars, honestly. I'd give it 4.5. It was really good. I enjoyed it. After I found out that Big Little Lies was a book and The Weekend Away was a book, I was like, dang, like I really wish that Stranger Things was a book, but obviously it's not. And I was like, I wonder if there are books that are like that, because Stranger Things pulls from a lot of other source material, like It or The Body or Alien and Nightmare on Elm Street and all these other source material that they pull from. And some of the source material that they pull from, those are books. So like, there's a lot of like Stephen King references and stuff like that. So during my search, what I came up with, I read like a bunch of reviews and stuff like that. What I came up with was this bad boy. So this is Paper Girls. This is the first volume of Paper Girls. And this is, I get why they compared this to Stranger Things. It is similar vibes. I'll get into that in a second. But the funny story is that I went out and I got this, and then I found out later, like literally that same night, I was on Amazon Prime Video, I think that's what it's called, and saw an ad for this. So apparently this has been adapted and turned into a TV show on Amazon Prime Video. So this is just the first volume. So this encompasses, I think, issues 1 through 5. I think there's 30 issues altogether. So it's 6 volumes altogether. And this is by, who is this by? I don't remember who. Brian K. Vaughan? I think, I don't know if that's how you say the last name. Again, I'll put it down here in case I'm pronouncing it wrong. But this was really cool. This is, like I said, this is a graphic novel. And the artwork, I really loved the artwork and the colors. Like, I just really enjoyed how this book looked. Like, the colors, like, maybe I'm just a child, but like, I just thought the colors and the artwork was very vibrant, very sharp. And it's also just a very interesting story so far. This story basically follows these 4 girls, and they're called Paper Girls because they deliver newspapers. And basically they're out early in the morning delivering their papers, and then something weird happens in the town. And now these 4 girls are going to, you know, band together to try to figure out what's going on. So very similar to Stranger Things, where you have these 4 boys riding around on bikes. Something strange happens in the town and they're trying to figure out what's going on. There's probably going to be some time travel involved in this. The concept of time travel is probably going to play a role in season 5, or at least that's what I'm thinking or hoping. So yeah, the vibes are definitely there. This also takes place in the 80s. I think this takes place in 1988, I believe, in a small town in, I think, Ohio, and Stranger Things is in Indiana. So similar vibes. The vibes are definitely there. I enjoyed this. I would definitely give this like 4.5 stars. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just that graphic novels are not like my thing. It's a very different like reading style. I didn't grow up reading comics and stuff like that as a kid, so it was just different, like trying to follow like the storyboard, or you know, the different squares and the speech bubbles and stuff. But like I said, it's a beautifully illustrated book. If you're looking for something that's going to give you Stranger Things vibes, check this out. The last book that I read in July was The Song of Achilles. Yeah, The Song. For the longest time I kept calling it Songs of Achilles, and this is by Madeline Miller. I did not know what I was getting myself into when I started reading this book. I knew that it was Greek mythology, and that was all I needed to know. I really like Greek mythology. I think it's so cool and so interesting. So once I heard that, it was like, say less, like I'm there. I did not know that it was basically like a fantasy romance. Fantasy is a strong word. It's fantasy just because it's Greek mythology, so it involves like gods and demigods and stuff like that. But a lot of the stuff that happens, most of the stuff that happens in this book is very like normal human stuff. It's not like supernatural, you know, magic. There are some moments where you get some of that, but it's not very heavily focused on that. It is much more focused on the romance and the relationship between the narrator and Achilles. And that was another thing that I did not realize. I did not know that the book was going to be narrated by someone else. I thought that Achilles was going to be narrating this book, and he is not. So it's the perspective of a different character. I'm not a romance person. I don't really like romance movies. I'm not into romance books. It's just not my thing. So I didn't know that. Had I known that before I read the book, there's a possibility that I may not have read it. But now that I read it, I actually really enjoyed it. I think that especially towards the end, like those last like 10 or so chapters, I felt very morally conflicted in the end. Because here you have Achilles, who I feel like has done nothing wrong, but people want to be mad at him and they want to blame him for something that He did, but he only did as like a reaction to something that somebody else did. And rather than everybody being mad at this person over here, who's the real monster and the real villain, they're like taking it out on Achilles. It's just got my brain ticking when I finished the book. There also are a lot of words, like names of people, gods, cities, stuff like that, that I could not for the life of me figure out how to pronounce. The narrator's last name, I still don't know how to pronounce that last name. So I listened to the audiobook to go with it because it kind of helped speed along the reading. This was another book that people said made them cry. And again, why? I don't understand the concept of like crying to a book. That just doesn't, it's just not, yeah, I don't know. I don't get it. There are quite a few characters that die at the end. But here's the thing, that's not even really a spoiler, because if you know the Greek mythology story, then this is basically just a retelling of Achilles' story from the narrator's perspective. So if you know the Greek mythology story, then you already know like who's gonna die and at whose hands they die at. That's not like a surprise or a shocker or a spoiler. Like, you already knew these characters were gonna die. So I don't really know why people were crying. There was one character that I kind of felt bad for when they died, because I'm like, dang, like, they ain't even do nothing wrong. And also they did so much to save his characters, so for them to still die in the end was like, wow. Rude. But yeah, I definitely would give this like a 4.5 out of 5. I think that if I was into romance, then I probably would have given it 5 stars, because it was definitely a very good story. I would say the first half of the story focuses on the development of the narrator and Achilles, like their relationship, and then the second half of the book is more focused on the actual like Trojan War. I thought it was very beautifully written. But yeah, I would definitely say if you're into like Greek mythology, especially if you're into like romance, I would definitely recommend this book. It was definitely very good. So those are all the books that I actually read during the month of July, and now we're going to get into what is on my TBR list for August. So the first book on my list is We Were Liars by E. Lockhart. Yeah, this is a book that is kind of controversial, especially in like the booktube, book talk world, because there are a lot of people that like love it, and then there are a lot of people that are like, no. So I'm gonna read it because I want to know what the hype is about. It is like a mystery book, so like a murder, I think it's a murder mystery. I'm assuming it's murder, but it's definitely mystery. The next book on the list is One of Us is Lying by Karen M. I think it's McManus. Pretty Little Liars meets The Breakfast Club in this addictive mystery about what happens when 5 strangers walk into detention and only 4 walk out alive. This is a show already on some streaming platform. I don't know if it's Hulu, Paramount, Peacock, something. So again, I want to read the book before I watch the show. And then the next book on my list right after that is the sequel, which is called One of Us is Next. I'm not going to read the synopsis or the description for that book because I don't know if there's going to be spoilers about what happens in the first book if you read the description for the second book. So we're going to skip over that, but just know that that is next on the list. And then after those two, the next one that I have on my list is They Both Die at the End. And again, has very mixed reviews in terms of whether it was good, whether it was overhyped. So that's pretty much why it's on my list, because I want to be able to decide for myself. I don't really know what this book is about completely. Most books, honestly, I go into kind of blind and don't really know what it's about. I might know like the genre, and that's pretty much it. I don't even know what the genre is for this book. And the last book on my TBR for August is called Such a Fun Age by Kylie Reed. There were some things that stuck out about this book that I thought were interesting and maybe would be a good read, and that was the fact that one of the MCs is a black woman, and the fact that it specified that it included some social commentary. I thought it would be nice to include a book that was a little more thought-provoking, and then the complicated reality of being a grown-up, because I mean, baby, us millennials trying, and at this point Gen Z, trying to navigate being an adult, like being in your 20s and trying to figure out how to be the adult that you were told you were supposed to be as a kid. It's stressful, okay? I'll probably do like an August wrap up video. Maybe, I don't know, that is assuming that I actually read these books, and I've already told you guys before that I'm not really good at reading books, but we're hopeful. We're hopeful. So that is it for today's video. If you guys have read any of the books that I read in July, comment that down below. And if you have read any of the books that are on my TBR for August, no spoilers please in the comments, but let me know what you would rate it. If you thought it was good or bad, is it worth reading? Was it not worth reading? Let me know down below in the comments, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye. So it wasn't like a surprise. Hello? Okay, all right. You done? I thought my phone was on silent. Apparently it was not.